How are things in your part of the world, in Colombia?
About the it's, everything that seems to be mm, okay.
Okay, is it
Nothing,
sunny
nothing.
out? I mean, it's pouring rain here in Toronto. Um,
Well, here we have still some kind of summer. No rain at all. No rain at all. It's been
okay.
sunny.
How have you been?
Regular. I've
Regular.
been. Yeah, I have to talk to the lawyers and see if I can recover some of my estate.
Yeah.
hmm And the prosecution. I can handle, I cannot do it anymore. Like my lawyer told me, we had to act very quickly.
Yeah.
So I had to, so the thing is that I'm very upset, but I
Yeah.
had to do my best, do my best to help the lawyer to,
Yeah. I mean, try not to identify, try not to get lost in this. Try to just bring yourself back to your body over and over and over again. Um,
okay.
I
I
mean,
had a dream, say again, say,
I mean, the thing
why?
about the energy that manifests itself in the forms of identification, it's C12 of the octave of food, and C12 can lawfully be used to sense the body. So when you're sensing your whole body from the bottom of your feet to the top of your head, when you are sensing, or what Mr. Gurdjieff called the sensation of self, at least in that moment that you're sensing yourself, you're not using that energy incorrectly. You can be using it incorrectly a second later as you flip into the state of identification. But as long as you are aware of your body, as long as you're aware of the sensation of self in that moment, you are not wasting that energy. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, through the
Mhm.
process of identification, it's like our atmosphere, our emanations get dispersed and we're unable to maintain the collected state. And it's one of the primary ways that we leak energy is, or, I always used to use the term leak energy, but in another sense, we can talk about leaking our atmosphere, leaking emanations. And identification is one of the principal uh, means that we do that through. So to bring yourself back to the body, to bring yourself back to here and now in this moment. I mean, Mr. Gurdjieff said the chief enemy to self remembering is identification. And that's because identification steals and lowers the same energy that is required for us to remember ourselves. So
Mhm.
I'm just wondering where everyone else is. I know
Mhm.
Ian is, oh, the man said Ben can't make it. A man will be 15 minutes late. I know that
Yeah.
Ian is in, actually, I think he's in Iceland right now. Um, he went to Paris and then they went to Ireland, and I think they're stopping in Iceland. And I'm going to actually get to see Ian for the first time. I mean, I've talked to him, I've been friends with Ian for quite a while, years on Facebook. One of those
Mhm.
people that you connect with, but I've never physically met him. And he's going to become flying through Toronto on Tuesday.
Oh,
So I'm going to go meet him and his girlfriend and get to see them in person.
great.
Uh,
What's the business with Ian? What kind of work he does?
I'm not sure. I mean, I have my guesses, but I don't want to say. I
Mm,
think it may be something to do with bed and breakfast and whatever. I know his girlfriend's a photographer, but um, it's a vacation. His parents had a timeshare in Ireland this year, and I think it's like their 50th wedding anniversary. And so, the kids all met in Ireland, and because they're going to Ireland, they might as well go to a few other places as well. Um,
I'm gonna walk by to get some drink. Okay.
okay, yeah,
Be back in 10 minutes. 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. Yeah, and I knew that this was going to happen in terms of summer and in terms of other commitments. Martin, our young Norwegian member, uh, has a summer job now where he's actually working on the weekends, but it's some kind of outdoors type job, ideally suited for him. I'm not exactly sure where the other people are. I know Francis quite often has commitments in London. This may be one of his weekends. Last weekend he was stuck in traffic. Iman said she's going to be 15 minutes late. Ben can't make it. So I'm not sure where Reggie is or um, Michael. I haven't heard from them. So this could be a very small group meeting. And here Guido is back. He's got his drink. So Guido, do you have any questions?
Last night I dream I dream flying again, in a cliff, like woo, like when I was a child. I I left the radio on, so I was listening to some oboe and piano music, and it allowed me that dream, some kind of weird dream. I just like the ones I used to have when I was a baby, as a child, like flying through a cliff,
Yeah. I think I've had one flying dream that I've remembered. Yeah.
So
What about, any aspect of the teachings you would like to explore a little more? I know you've been involved in the teachings longer than I have.
no,
You encountered it in 1979, I believe it was, with the director Peter Brooks coming to Columbia,
yeah,
director of Meetings with Remarkable Men, sort of the loose biography, the allegorical biography, shall we say, of Mr. Gurdjieff. And Madame de Salzman and some of his students were actually intimately involved in the making of that movie. So, you've been connected to these teachings for a long time. So have I. I've been it since 1981. And for me, I've read every book by Mr. Gurdjieff or by one of his students, and even some by students of students. But I'm not really interested in the students of students. I'm more interested in the actual students and the recollections they have of either the teachings or of Mr. Gurdjieff, because he did embody these teachings. He lived them and expressed them through everything that he did. So that's where my focus, that's where my real interest is. So, all of his senior students, even Bennett, even though I think Bennett can distort the teachings a little bit too much, but Madame de Salzman, Nyland, Annie Louise Stavely, various people. the Catherine Hulme. I love Catherine Hulme. Her book Undiscovered Country. It's just like wow, wow. Um, beautiful book. Beautiful book. It's about her life and how she begins to apply the teachings. I mean, I think she got a science degree or something. Um, and then she became a writer. And, she met Mr. Gurdjieff when she was trying to be a writer in Paris. Spent years connected with him. And and she wrote the story, the book called The Nun's Story, that was in a movie that featured Audrey Hepburn back in the 1950s. Um, but when World War II broke out for America, I mean, for Canada, it came a couple of years sooner. But when it broke out, she decided to implement the teachings in a real radical and transformative way. She came from a middle class background, somewhat intellectual, and she volunteered at the San Francisco shipyards and became one of the women welders. So she would be hanging off, this massive sheet of metal and welding and building the destroyers and the battleships that the Americans produced to combat the Japanese and build up the Pacific Fleet again. So she spent years getting, training her moving center for, the riveting and all of this stuff and the welding of the ships. And then when the war ended, she heard about this organization that was connected to the United Nations. I think it was the United Nations refugee, some kind of program. And she volunteered for that. And she sort of it was like a non-governmental organization, almost quasi-military with sort of military dress. And she went to places like Germany and she saw the horrors there. And her job then was to help the refugees, to help the displaced people. And she made recontact with Mr. Gurdjieff then, and just a remarkable, remarkable story. Undiscovered Country. One of my favorite. Fritz Peters. I love Fritz Peters. His boyhood with Gurdjieff. A lot of people in the foundation and a lot of people who are in lineage groups do not like Fritz Peters because he thumbed his nose at them. But you read his books, and he had a real deep understanding of the teachings in a way that a lot of people in the foundation don't have. But as Mr. Gurdjieff said, I got under your skin. The other people encountered him through the head and learned it, whereas he got Fritz Peters young enough that his teachings were under his skin. And so he's got a unique perspective on the teachings. Another book I love is C.S. Knott, A Pupil's Journey. That's the subtitle. Gurdjieff's student or something, A Pupil's Journey. He wrote two books, but the first one is first class because there's a lot of teaching in it as well, and a lot of the talks that Mr. Gurdjieff gave, and a lot of the understanding that he picked up, as well as it's woven into a biography. So it's woven into his life, and how he met his wife, who was an American movements instructor, and a lot more in the second book about his life after Mr. Gurdjieff, again implementing it. So for me, I've been very, very influenced by a lot of these books. They highlight aspects of the teachings, and they highlight aspects of Mr. Gurdjieff. I believe he was given a real terrible mission. He was told to take these teachings to the West. So, in the Bible, when they talk about seeds thrown on, hard, brittle, thorny soil, he not only threw the seeds on the soil, he dug in the soil and he put the mulch in and he lived it, and he created these seedlings. in this soil that was so inhospitable. And the seedlings are what we have today. And the stories of Mr. Gurdjieff as well. We will never see the likes of him. He was one of these, shooting stars. The knowledge that he possessed was phenomenal. And, it died with him, a lot of it. But enough of what he came to teach has survived. So, he did his job. He was a good and faithful servant. He did his job. He planted those seeds. He didn't just plant them and leave. He nurtured them. He nurtured them with his own sweat and his own being. I feel blessed to have discovered these teachings. They are so important to me, and they always have been. But the older I get, just the more I'm amazed at what these teachings really represent. And every time I think, aha, now I sort of understand them, a new thing comes and knocks me off. And I've got to incorporate it and readjust everything in light of that. And, it's continual. It's like the book, Beelzebub Tales to his grandson. In that book, the first time I read it, I didn't like it. I was just like, I had so many comments in the margins and everything. And the second time I read it, I was so humiliated for the way I had read it the first time. And the second time I read it, I felt that he had added. There were things in the book that were not there the first time I read it. And every time I read it, it's like he's put more and more stuff in. Because as our understanding grows, our ability to perceive deeper and deeper truths in that book emerges. And he once said he was going to write 24 books. And then he realized how we could write them all in a single volume. And I've uncovered at least 5 or 6 of those books. And they are distinct books hidden in those teachings. And every time I read it, it's like there's another new manual, a new book that was hidden there before that I didn't quite see or have the ability to understand. What about you, Guido? What books have you have touched you?
I want to know about Blavatsky. Blavatsky doesn't talk too much about Gurdjieff, no? Blavatsky have her own thoughts, her own...
Blavatsky?
Yeah, Blavatsky. The lady.
Theosophy.
Blavatsky.
Blavatsky.
Madame Blavatsky.
Yeah, Madame Blavatsky is a theosophist. And Mr. Gurdjieff explored theosophy, and he said it will make you a candidate for the lunatic asylum.
Oh yeah.
Keep away from theosophy. You don't sit in a room and have these spiritual visions. If you want to find the truth, you go and find someone who knows the truth and who learned the truth from someone who knows the truth, who learned the truth from someone who knows the truth. These are ancient teachings, and they were passed down from master to initiate, who became a master to initiate, who became a master to initiate. And Bennett said they did this for 80 generations. Madame Blavatsky and these various people who sit in their rooms and they hallucinate these things, and then people take their hallucinations as realities when they're not real. There is so much distortion, so many problems that are associated with things such as theosophy. If you've ever looked into Madame Blavatsky, she was a crazy woman. She had terrible hygiene. She did not maintain any kind of a collected state. She was just, and it's like, how can any wisdom come from someone who is not able to maintain a collected state? These masters and it's all hallucinations and it's imaginings and it's distortions and it won't get you anywhere. Uh, Teachings are not really needed. The most important thing are the inner exercises. It's the inner work. The teachings highlight the utility of the inner work, and it's so much more than, say, just meditation. Just sitting there and going, Om. The inner work is so complex because we want to first harvest the higher hydrogens that we need to grow our being. And then we want to grow our being, and we want to grow our being in a very, very specific form and sequence so that we're not wobbling and we don't have these distortions within ourselves. But learn from someone who learned from someone who learned from someone who learned from someone. And these people that he learned from, these were the head abbots of major monasteries, major hermitages, major spiritual centers. And there were groups of people and students, and they had been in existence. One report, Bennett says he's been able to trace it back to 2500 BC, Babylon. So we're talking at least 4,500 years, this unbroken chain. That's where you can trust it. Blavatsky sitting in her room with her crazy musings. I don't think so. I really don't.
So what is the hypnotism or the regression when people that make regressions that going deep into your mind perhaps understand what's the difference with the also what they were. If I was a captain or a priest or an emperor, the regressions,
Okay.
not the current.
Yeah.
The current is different.
The Sunday Times, one of the most respected newspapers in England, in the United Kingdom, published back in the 70s this series of weekly articles on something called the Bloxham tapes. There was a hypnotherapist in Wales, and he started doing this regression work with a Welsh housewife. And in one of her past lives, she was named Lavinia, and she was the wife of a master at arms who trained the Emperor Constantine the Great when he was in England. He was actually proclaimed Emperor of Rome when he was in England. His father died in York. I lived in York for 7 years. It was founded by the Romans. It was the fortress of Iboracum. There were historians who read through the accounts, and they said the detail and the historical accuracy is absolutely remarkable. And only someone who had a degree in that particular time in history and the weapons involved would know these details. Now, she also talked about another life where she was this person who was a very historical figure, a merchant, mercantile in France. The historical detail that she gave about that life was remarkable. And there were a couple of other ones, and it was considered the accuracy of what she had to say. Now, there were people who didn't just leave it there. Turned out there was a novel published in 1948 that published and then disappeared. And the novel was a fictional account of a master of arms who taught the young Constantine weaponry in England, and he had a fictional wife named Lavinia. This Welsh housewife had somewhere along the way read that book, forgotten about it, and those details all came up as if they were absolute historical facts. The merchant in the south of France, she recounted all of these big details about his life, and it turned out there was a book, a biography of this merchant, like 15th century or something like that. And the person who wrote the biography said that he couldn't include the whole man's life. And so, for brevity and to keep it focused, he made no reference to the fact the man had a wife and 5 children. He omitted that from the biography, and that was not mentioned in the hypnotic regressions. The person who really started the whole idea of hypnotic regressions was a chiropractor in Denver. And he wrote a book called the Case for Bridie Murphy, where one of his clients, he started doing hypnotic regressions, and she went back to Ireland as a woman in Northern Ireland, and born and married and died and whatever. And one of the major newspapers in Chicago sent reporters over to Ireland. The time period that she was talking about, there were parish records, all births, all deaths, all marriages were listed, and they found nothing, no records. And what they went back, this lady, her name was Virginia Tighe, they went back to where she was born and spent the first 5 years of her life before she moved. And it turned out across the road from her was an Irish lady who spoke with a brogue, and her name was Bridie Murphy. This is on and on and on and on and on. There was a stage hypnotist called Ravine, the Great Ravine. And I saw his show, wonderful show, back in the 80s. And I bought his book. And in his book, he was told of this man who in hypnotic regression was able to produce an Etruscan burial prayer in ancient Etruscan and phenomenally accurate. Ravine didn't accept it as being a valid memory of a past life. He went and saw the man, and he had the man, and he regressed him. He said, I want you to go to the moment you first saw this image. The man was in the library, sitting next to someone who turned a page, and the image was on the page, and he looked at it, and then the man turned the page again. In a fraction of a second, his subconscious mind had memorized all of this. Now, as you can see, I've done a lot of research on this over and over and over and over again. At this point, we have to discount hypnotic age regression. I will not do it. I could have made tens of thousands of dollars doing it, but I consider it fraudulent activity and a misuse of hypnosis. It doesn't mean, and I want to stress this, this does not mean that I do not believe in reincarnation. I spent 3 years studying Hinduism at university in the early 80s. But they've known about hypnosis in India for thousands of years. They've used it. Why don't the Hindu gurus, why don't they use hypnosis to uncover past lives? What are they, fools? It took a chiropractor in Denver in the 1950s to make this connection to a culture that has used hypnosis for millennium? No, there's too much distortion, too much crap that can come in. Reggie, how are you doing?
Good. Sorry for being late.
That's okay. Not a lot of us here today. I know a man is going to try. She said she was going to be 15 minutes late, but with being in Syria, um, it's a hit and miss sometimes with power and internet. And how are you doing, Reggie?
Very good. Very good. Sorry, I can see. Oh, okay.
Inner exercises. Have you been doing a lot of inner work?
I think so, a lot. Trying to be present. What is the phrase? Everywhere and every time,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Always and everywhere.
Always and everywhere.
That's it. That's English. So it was in Russian or who knows what language. How's it
Yeah.
been with the students? Have you been able to be more present in the classroom and?
Yeah, it's because of the struggle. It's a very good exercise. There is a lot of alarms to do, to be aware, and it's good. It's very good.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Gurdjieff told one of his students who was a school teacher to focus on one student and try to get through to that student. So I mean, you teach science. There's got to be some students there that are really into science and they have an aptitude for science. Choose one and really try to convey the love that you have for science and try to convey the mystery and all of that to that one student. The other students will all get it. This was something, during the Second World War to a school teacher. Mr. Gurdjieff gave this exercise to just focus on one student.
One student, okay.
One student. One student per class, perhaps. And, imagine as if, what you're teaching is going to them. I saw this wonderful video of a Jewish rabbi. Well, he was talking about when he was in high school. He had this teacher, and he discovered years later that this teacher was a member of a Gurdjieffian group and whatever. And he felt as if the teacher were speaking to him. And finally, he confronted the teacher, and the teacher said, I was waiting for you to do this. And then the teacher had him come after class or whenever. I forget the exact details. And he trained him to self-remember. He trained him to walk around and to memorize everything and to pay attention. And, he spent quite a bit of time on this, and it changed this man's life. This was a Gurdjieffian exercise, and teaching him that. I'm not telling you to do that at all. But, I'll find that documentary. It's not a documentary. It's a rabbi. It's like a 15, 20-minute talk. It's beautiful. How he was a kid and how this teacher, he was speaking to the class, but he was speaking to him as well. And he began to hear that. And it's like, why is this directed at me? And, the teacher, I was waiting for you to recognize this. It's a wonderful story. And then he became a rabbi, but he's very mindful, very self-aware, all of that.
It's a very good exercise. I mean, you put your attention on other place. You can, self-remembering more.
Yeah.
You notice things that you didn't notice, like, for example, something that my daughter does, my wife. It's different, really. It's good.
Yeah. Who's the bell? Is that you, Reggie, or?
Yeah, it's
okay.
my
I just wondering, someone else coming on to join us, or?
Help Iman to connect, Adam.
Yeah.
Yeah, Iman is coming, but she's having trouble. She's having trouble to connect. Help him, Adam. Help her.
Yeah, I mean, last time I talked to Iman, I don't know if it was her internet connection, but we had to switch to Facebook. And I can't quite do that here in this context because we're already on Zoom.
She's got to accept your invitation instead of sending one.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, she knows how to do it. It's,
Okay.
she's just not able to. Do the Zoom. She's done Zoom before, but I have a feeling somehow it's the internet connection and the slow service in Syria. I mean, I want to do, my goal today was to do and record an inner exercise that puts together a lot of inner exercises.
Thank you.
The collected state. I don't know if I'm going to pull it up for anyone who's watching this who may not have read it on my timeline this week.
That collective says those are words you invented or they are put up by somebody else. Collected state.
Oh, the collected state, that's Mr. Gurdjieff.
Oh, okay.
It's Mr. Gurdjieff.
Okay.
But I mean, it's part of the hidden dimension. So they've tried to hide this exercise, but no more. So, Mr. Gurdjieff, I posted it on my timeline, and I called it Atmosphere, Emanations, and the Collected State. If I had to choose one passage from one of Mr. Gurdjieff's students that contained an essential key to understand what he was trying to teach, it would be this. And this passage is by Solange Clostres, who started out as, like a 20-year-old girl in wartime Paris when she met Mr. Gurdjieff, and she became one of the more accomplished movements instructors. And she was one of his personal assistants and spent a lot of time preparing meals and stuff like that in his apartment at Rue des Colonels. This is the quote. One day, I told G. Gurdjieff that I felt a lot of energy after a movements class and that it disappeared. I could not keep it. I added that also in life, certain circumstances gave me energy and that likewise I would lose it. After a silence, G replied gently, quietly, that the human body is surrounded by an atmosphere, as is the earth, that through thoughts and emotions, we let our energy go or we lose it. He told me that this atmosphere differed in extent for each person. It was like a continuity of one's body, like an outer limit. He said that I should practice sensing the space around me to feel my atmosphere as a continuation of my presence, to sense its limit without coming out of it, without going beyond it. Learn to keep my energy within the boundary of my own atmosphere, not to let this boundary be affected by anything on the outside and not to let anything enter into it. G. Gurdjieff continued, saying that if you let your energy go in imagination, emotions, you identify with these and your energy is lost. It is necessary to learn not to let this energy be drawn out of you. That I must learn to think and feel without identifying. That habitual thoughts are not a real reflection, but associations and the emotions with which we identify. Consequently, the energy is absorbed and lost. That the development of attention, of consciousness, and this last paragraph is essential, that the development of attention and of consciousness is made with the energy of being, that we must learn to use it to develop our being to the full and not to waste it. And this is the book Solange Clostrez, Becoming Conscious with Mr. Gurdjieff. This is what he called the collected state, where we collect our energy around us. We bring this energy to ourselves, so we stay in this collected state. And he said that after we do various forms of inner work, it's a good idea to just spend 15 minutes in quietness so that we don't jump out into the world and disperse the energy, because this is what we feed ourselves with. In the exercise that I've done before, you know, he talks about becoming aware of your atmosphere, calm and still, and then breathing it in. And I think that this is what we should do at the end of all of our inner work. Not the work, that we do in the outside world, but when we sit down and specifically do inner work. And let me just pull that back up again and highlight some of the things. So, you know, I've always talked about before about how we leak energy at the lower levels. We leak the energy. It's not like we're a water pipe. It's like we are an atmosphere, and the energy gets pulled out of our atmosphere. Our emanations disperse. So, I forget the exact all 7 of them. According to George Adi, the 7 characteristics of sleep are formatory thinking, lying, daydream and imagination, identification, internal considering, and negative emotions. There, 7 of them. Even though identification and internal considering are the same, this is how we lose our energy. This is how we waste those particles, those emanations, those substances which we should be pulling into ourself to feed ourselves. So I've used the metaphor leaking energy, thinking of it and describing it as water pipes leaking. But it's not that. It's atmosphere, and it's our emanations being pulled out from us and not coming into us. I'm not sure. I think Reggie has frozen.
Maybe I don't hear any dog barking or children playing.
I mean, do you see him frozen on the screen as well?
No.
He's not moving
Okay.
on the screen.
No. Not really. Nobody. I only can see me and you.
Oh.
Not the
Okay.
mosaic.
I thought we could all see each other.
No, not me. I hear.
Okay.
Sometimes in the beginning, sometimes it happens, you know, a mosaic.
Yeah, maybe it's because you're on a tablet.
But Reggie is back now.
Reggie.
Alan, when you wake up in the morning, I remember you said that you want you should stand up and do things.
Well, actually, I lie in bed and do them, but I sense my body and I inhabit my body. And without getting up, I stay in bed and I begin to do inner exercises when I'm in bed. Uh,
Great, great.
so it's like I'm awake, breath, body, this moment. Um, and I've been doing this for years. Okay, I'm not, I want to do an inner exercise. And it's a fairly complex inner exercise. So I want to record this. I want to record it so I can listen to it afterwards myself. But it's always good to begin an inner exercise with an affirmation, stating our purpose. And there are, for me, my 3 lines of work are for myself, for my fellow human being, and for this holy planet. And that I hope the work that I do and the inner work and the development of my being and all of these feed myself, my fellow humans, and this holy planet. And I know by working on myself, by developing myself, by engaging in the science of being and the alchemy of human transformation, that I am helping humanity, even in a very infinitesimal way, because I am one person, and I am helping great nature. By working on myself, I serve these 3 goals. Now, what I want to focus on is, 3 prayers that are really all the same prayer. The first is wholly affirming, wholly denying, wholly reconciling, transubstantiate in me for my being. And the second one is sources of divine rejoicings, revolts, and sufferings. Direct your actions upon us. And the third is holy God, holy, firm, holy, immortal. Have mercy on us. These are all found on the same page in Beelzebub Tales. They are all the same prayer expressed 3 different ways. The affirming, the denying, the reconciling, rejoicings, revolts, sufferings, holy God, holy firm, holy immortal. They represent the 3 aspects of our being. Now, I want us to begin by simply becoming aware of our breath, by becoming aware of our body, by becoming aware of our breathing. To imagine that as we breathe in particles, higher hydrogens, particles that we need for the higher alchemical transformations within our being, particles that we need to grow our being. And as we exhale a gray, foggy waste, and we imagine that something stays within us. So we breathe in, and then as we breathe out, something stays within us. Breathing in, and as we breathe out, something stays within us, and we breathe out a stale, foggy waste. Just focusing on our breath, focusing on our breathing. Now, the first exercise that I'm going to do involves the hands and the feet. And so starting with the right hand, in the right thumb, there's 3 bones in all of our fingers, and the third one goes into our palm. 3 bones. So starting with our right thumb, the 3 bones right into our palm. Say, wholly affirming. The 3 bones in our right index finger. Wholly denying. The 3 bones in our middle finger. Wholly reconciling. The 4th finger. Transubstantiate in me. The 5th finger. For my being. And then moving down to the left foot and starting with the left baby toe, wholly affirming. The left 4th toe, wholly denying. The left middle or 3rd toe, wholly reconciling. The left 2nd toe, transubstantiate in me, and the left big toe, for my being. And then moving over to the right foot, the right big toe, wholly affirming. The right 2nd toe, wholly denying. The right middle or 3rd toe, wholly reconciling. The right 4th toe, transubstantiate in me, and the right baby toe, for my being. And then moving to the left hand, starting with the baby finger, wholly affirming. The 4th finger, wholly denying. The middle left finger, wholly reconciling. The index finger, transubstantiate in me, and the thumb, for my being. And then let's move to the second prayer. Sources of divine rejoicings, revolts, and sufferings, direct your actions upon us. The right wrist, say the word sources. The right elbow, of. The right shoulder, divine. The left hip, rejoicings. The left knee, revolts. The left ankle, and. The right ankle, sufferings. The right knee, direct. The right hip, your. The right or the left shoulder, actions. The left elbow, on. And the left wrist, us. And then become aware of the bones in your right lower leg and imagine that the marrow grows illuminated. And into the bones in your right leg, say the word holy. Your right upper leg, God. Your pelvic bones and marrow, holy. Your left upper leg, firm. Your left lower leg, holy. And then up your spine to your skull, immortal. Your right upper arm bone and the marrow, have. Your right lower arm, mercy. Your left upper arm, the bone and the marrow, on. And your right arm, us. These are actually 3 different exercises. Paul Biedler says that in the morning, we should do the hands, and we should do it 3 times. So you start with wholly affirming, the next digit wholly denying, the next digit wholly reconciling, the next digit transubstantiate in me, and the final one, for my being. And from the right, it always goes from the thumb or the big toe out, and for the left, it comes from the baby finger or the little toe inwards. And Biedler says when we wake up in the morning, we should do 3 rounds. So saying the prayer 4 times 3 because of our 4 limbs. The other 2 are also Beadler exercises. You know, the lower left leg, the lower right leg, the upper right leg, the hip, the upper left leg, the lower left leg, the spine and skull, the upper right arm, the lower right arm, the upper left arm, and the lower right arm. And for this one, even though I used holy God, holy, firm, holy, immortal, have mercy on us, we can also do this one as holy, affirming, holy, denying, holy, reconciling, transubstantiate in me for my being. And then the joint ones, you know, sources of divine rejoicings, revolts, and sufferings. Direct your actions upon us. This one can also be done as holy, affirming, holy, denying, holy, reconciling, transubstantiate in me for my being. So we can use the same holy equations for a number of these exercises. There happen to be the same number of words in the sources of divine rejoicings, revolts, and sufferings. Direct your actions upon us as there is in holy affirming, holy denying, holy reconciling. Transubstantiate in me for my being. Now, these are all self-sensing exercises. These exercises get us into the body, and they are very, very profound exercises. Now, there's something else I want to just briefly touch upon as well. Mr. Gurdjieff taught what is called the filling exercise. And again, there are a number of different combinations that we can do. Some people find it really hard to fill with sensation all the way from the bottom of the feet up to the top of the head. And in which case, Mr. Gurdjieff said it's easier to start with our limbs. So let's just do this. You know, this is filling with sensation. So this is sort of like an introductory filling exercise to the real filling exercise. So just imagine filling with sensation in your right arm, just sensing your whole right arm. And then filling with sensation in your right leg, sensing your whole right leg. And then filling with sensation in your left leg, sensing your whole left leg. And then filling with sensation in your left arm, sensing your whole left arm. And then as you come to the right arm again, fill with sensation in the right arm, and then fill with sensation in the right leg, sensing both of them, the right arm and the right leg. And then filling with sensation in the right leg, and at the same time, filling with sensation in the left leg, both the right leg and the left leg at the same time. And then filling with sensation in the left leg and filling with sensation in the left arm at the same time. And then filling with sensation in the left arm and filling with sensation in the right arm and then doing them all together, filling with sensation in the right leg, filling with sensation in the left leg, the right arm, sensing all our arms and legs at the same time. It's easier to fill with sensation if you're beginning in the arms and legs. But Mr. Gurdjieff's filling exercise, the instructions are, as a vessel fills with warm golden honey, imagine your body filling with sensation, starting in the bottom of the feet, and then imagine filling with sensation up into your ankles, up your lower legs, up your knees, up your thighs. And as the sensation fills up to your hips, imagine it starting to go up your hands and arms. And simultaneously, as it goes up your hands and arms, imagine sensation filling up to your shoulders. So then filling with sensation up to your neck and filling with sensation to the top of your head, sensing your body, the whole body, developing the sensation of self, this awareness of our physical body. Now I want to segue into another profound inner exercise. So I'm giving us a whole series of inner exercises that can be done separately. I want to try and make sure that I've got this on recording. So it is here so people can benefit from it. They can understand it. Again, we're going to go back to our arms and our legs. And there's a more advanced version of this exercise where you breathe in feeling and breathe out sensation. But I don't want to go into the advanced form. I just want to acquaint you with the sequence of this exercise. So in your mind, as you breathe in, or you can say it out loud even, the word I. And then as you breathe out, the word am. Now the sequence of events is we breathe in with one limb, the word I, and we breathe out the sequential limb with the word am, and then we breathe in the word I in that same limb, and then breathe out am in the next limb, and breathe in I, and then breathe out am in the next limb. So begin by breathing in I in your right arm, and then breathing out am in your right leg, and then breathing in I in your right leg, and breathing out am in your left leg, and breathing in I in your left leg, and breathing out am in your left arm, breathing in I in your left arm, breathing out am in your right arm, breathing in I in your right arm, breathing out am in your right leg, breathing in I in your right leg, breathing out am in your left leg, breathing in I in your left leg, breathing out am in your right arm. And we'll do it one more time. Breathing in I in your right arm, breathing out am, or your left arm, breathing out am in your right arm, breathing in, it's a little too complex to narrate. Breathe in I in your right arm, breathe out am in your right leg, breathe in I in your right leg, breathe out am in your left leg, breathe in I in your left leg, breathing out am in your left arm. And then just allow your attention to rest. And the final exercise, looping all of these exercises, the final exercise I want to do today is the great I am exercise. Now, it's called the I am exercise. I stuck the word great on it because Mr. Gurdjieff highlights the central importance. The solar plexus. It's the center of the development of our Kesdran body, one of our the higher being body, not the highest being body, but the body that we want to build. Is the center is the solar plexus. And so he said what we should do is say I in the solar plexus and am in the body. So breathing in I and then am into the awareness of our body. Breathing I into our solar plexus and then am into our body. I am. I am. I am. And just do this on your own, breathing I into the solar plexus and then am throughout the body for a minute, following your own natural breathing. And then just then bring your attention, allow your attention to rest. And I would like you to finish, as we should, all inner exercises, except those when we're walking down the street or doing out in life. But when we set aside time in our day to do inner work at the end, become aware of your atmosphere. It extends around the body roughly a meter. Become aware of your atmosphere. Quieten your thoughts, quieten your emotions. Imagine your atmosphere is like a tranquil pond without a ripple on it, without any kind of disturbance. Sense your atmosphere around you, quiet, calm. Sense the molecules, the particles that have been created in your atmosphere through this inner work and these inner exercises, calm and tranquil around you. And in a moment, and when you do this on your own, you don't have to do the count of 3 or anything, but in a moment, I'm going to count to 3. And when I get to 3, suck your atmosphere into your body with your breath and imagine that something of it stays within yourself. So imagine your atmosphere tranquil around you. 1, 2, 3. Suck it into yourself. Imagine it stays within you. And then ending with an affirmation. May results from this exercise be transubstantiated within me for my being. And then Mr. Gurdjieff recommends that whenever we do inner work of this nature, that we try to spend the next 15 minutes maintaining the collected state, Just do not let these particles, these emanations leave us, to keep them within us in order to feed our being. Now, I've done a lot here, and I wanted to do this to record them, so they are here, so that people can come and they can find these exercises. Was a conspiracy, not really a conspiracy, because they were doing what they were told to do, to hide these exercises away from the world. And this is why Guido, who has been part of these teachings since 1979, didn't really understand the term collected state and how that comes directly from Mr. Gurdjieff, because this was part of the oral transmission that they didn't want other people to know about. The collected state. It's so important. So there were the three prayers: holy affirming, holy denying, holy reconciling. Transubstantiate in me for my being. The next prayer: sources of divine rejoicings, revolts, and sufferings, direct your actions upon us. And the third one: holy God, holy firm, holy immortal, have mercy on us. So the bones. This should be the holy affirming, according to Paul Beidler. So we start with the right hand, right thumb across, holy affirming, holy denying, holy reconciling, transubstantiate in me for my being. And I'm not going to lift my left foot up and do my toes, but starting with the baby toe, holy affirming, moving across, then moving across the right foot, starting with holy affirming with the big toe, and then finishing with the left hand, starting with the left baby finger, holy affirming, holy denying, holy reconciling, transubstantiate in me for my being. And then the other one is the joints exercise, going through all of the joints in our body, sources of divine, and then the left hip, rejoicings, the left knee, revolts, the left ankle, sufferings, coming back up the right side, the ankle, sources of divine rejoicings, and actually sufferings is the right ankle, and is the left ankle, and sufferings, the right knee, direct the right hip, your actions on us. And we can also do this one with the holy affirming. They're exactly the same number of words, one word per joint. This is also a moving exercise, so you can do it walking down the street, aware of the movement of your joints. And then the other exercise was the marrow illuminating in the bones in our lower left leg, upper left leg, hip or pelvis, upper or lower right leg, upper right leg, hip, pelvis, our upper left leg, our lower left leg, upper spine, including our skull, our right arm, our lower arm, our left upper arm, left lower arm. And these ones, the holy God, holy firm, holy immortal, have mercy on us, or holy affirming, holy denying, holy reconciling, transubstantiate in me for my being. These ones can also be done as a moving exercise. If you're on public transit, if you're sitting in a car, not driving the car, but if you're a passenger or on a bus or subway or whatever, they're ideal exercises to do when you're in that state. And then I moved into the filling exercises. The preliminary way for people who have trouble with the filling exercises is to begin with our limbs. Mr. Gurdjieff said it's easier to fill our limbs than it is our body. So I went through the limbs and developing a sort of more and more coherence and bringing them all together. And then the filling exercise, as it's actually taught, filling the body as a vessel fills with warm golden honey, to develop the sensation of self. And then I briefly went into the breathing in and then the breathing out and the breathing in and the breathing out of our limbs. This is actually a fairly advanced exercise at the next level, because when we say the word I and, for instance, breathe in to our right arm, we should be breathing in feeling. And as we say and into our right leg, we should be breathing out sensation. And as we say breathe in I into our right leg, we breathe in feeling. And as we breathe out and in our left leg, we should be breathing out sensation. But for a lot of people, the idea and the understanding of what feeling is, as distinct to sensation in the body, is a little bit difficult. It's something that comes after a number of years of intensive work on oneself. We slowly begin to differentiate the two. But it's a good idea to be aware, just to do it as a breathing exercise. So the I is breathed in one limb, the am out the next limb, and then the I in that same limb and the am out the next limb, the I in that same limb and the am out the next limb. And this is an exercise where we circle around ourselves. And the done with sensation and feeling, this exercise is actually recounted in Madame de Salzmann's The Reality of Being. So it's published in there. And then, the I am exercise. This is where our being is centered, at least at the level of the Kesdjan body, which is the body that we're trying to grow, that part of ourselves that we want to grow into. So the I is felt in the solar plexus and the am throughout our body. And then, like I said, whatever inner exercises we do to try and keep the emanations at the end, imagine our atmosphere tranquil, the emanations and everything contained in our atmosphere. And then breathing it into ourselves. And then as we breathe out, imagining something remains, so that we use these exercises to grow our inner being. Let me just, I've referred to this before in previous
advances when you put another center on it, like sensing.
Well,
That's advanced.
Sensing is different than feeling.
Yeah. But when you put it into an exercise, two centers, that becomes an advanced exercise.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah, two centers is the creation of what Mr. Gurdjieff called a regulator, which helps to slow the aging process down and brings us a little bit more back into balance with ourselves. So there are a number of benefits. Mr. Gurdjieff said that every center is like a spring. Nowadays with digital watches, kids don't know, we used to wind up watches, and you'd wind the spring up and then it would unwind, and then when the watch stopped, you would wind it up again. Our centers are metaphorically, they have these springs, but we cannot rewind them. Once they wind down, that center dies. And Mr. Gurdjieff talked about dying by thirds. My mother's head brain died before her body and feeling brain, and she developed dementia. It's a terrible condition. When we waste up the number of impressions were allowed to accumulate in one center, we cannot extend it. And the way we can regulate it, and a regulator is connecting two or three of the centers. So the wholly affirming, wholly denying, going around our body is the connection of the two centers. But just bringing up this one that I've showed you before, waking sleep. The one on the left is the normal man. The one on the right this is the Kesdjan body that Mr. Gurdjieff talked about. He didn't like to use the word astral because astral had too many associations and connotations with it. So he preferred to give it a different name. It's
Cassian?
it's the first body we grow consciously, the middle one. And then the right-hand side, he talked about the higher being body. And that's the one we grow that leads us into the awakened state. So you can see this growth of being from the left to the middle to the right. And the way we do this is we prevent our atmosphere from being sucked away, from leaking. And it's not really energy because these are all molecules, these are particles, these are substances. We prevent it from dissipating and we keep it within ourselves and we bring it into ourselves by doing the inner work, by doing the breathing exercises. We are bringing into our body the higher carbons found in chapter 9 of In Search of the Miraculous that are required for the higher alchemical processes of human transformation. We're not born with these particles in us. We have to collect them and absorb them from our environment. And when we identify and all of those other things, they get shot away. We lose them into the universe. We want to keep them and use them to feed our being so that we grow from that broken, fractured state on the left into the state of personal consciousness, the development of the Kesdjan body, the astral body, into the state on the right, the development of the higher being body and becoming awake human beings. So this is a profound alchemical process. And the only way we can do this is through inner work. If you had to choose between the teachings and the inner exercises take precedent. But Mr. Gurdjieff was always about the balanced and harmonious development. So along with the inner work and the inner exercises should be a growth in our understanding of these teachings, in our understanding of what we're doing. We want to develop both sides, but without the inner work, without the harvesting, the collecting, the using of these higher particles that we obtain through the inner work and the inner exercises, nothing will happen, nothing will grow. So to understand the process of growth and to understand how we grow, how we stay and remain in the collected state. And the thing about the collected state was that Mr. Gurdjieff talked about the fact that initially we practice the collected state when we are alone and by ourselves and doing our inner work. But as we get more and more comfortable with it, as we get more and more strong in that, we take it out into the world. It is possible to walk down the street in the collected state. It's possible to be on the subway, on the bus, in the collected state. It's possible in many, many places to be in the collected state, but it's much harder to do it in the world. So we first incubate this and nurture it quietly when we're doing our inner work, and we slowly take it into the outer world.
Great.
So
Thank you, Adam. Once again.
Yeah. Do the inner work. Do the inner work. Any questions? I've covered a lot just in the last 50 minutes. I've gone through a tremendous amount. They're going to hate me. Well, they already hate me in the foundation. the Toronto Foundation, they've actually phoned people up and said, keep away from Alan. So, okay, gentlemen, thank you for coming. Do the inner work. Do the inner work. You know, every day, as often as you can, breathe it back into yourself. Stay in that collected state. Start to sense your atmosphere. I mean, the other thing about the atmosphere is Mr. Gurdjieff said that there were 4 different dimensions to it. I assume this is the atmosphere in world 96, 48, 24, and 12. So there's a physical atmosphere, there's a Kesdjan atmosphere, there's a higher being atmosphere, and there's a lunar atmosphere. And we want to make sure we're not fractured and broken, and we want to keep it all together. But, you know, this is where I get to a little bit complex with it. But I've overloaded today. But I felt like overloading today just to really put it out there. Okay,
Yeah,
gentlemen.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye now.
It was wonderful. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.